The day was March 8th, 2023. This is the day when Iron Mugulis began to unknowingly tear apart Scarlet and Violet's competitive scene. With the stats of Primal Kyogre, an ability that's only useful in Ubers, and a solid typing all around. Combine this with its signature move Half Full, and you have a beast to defeat. Sure, Half Full only works at 50% or higher health, but the 500 base power when combined with its Sky High special attack stat and ability to set up Stealth Rock in the same turn made it one of the very best Pokemon in both Ubers and OU. No one noticed it though. As you see, Iron Mugulis' goal was not to terrorize the competitive scene for glory, but rather to ruthlessly destroy every tier it could get its hands on. That's why, when it landed in RU, which, let's be real, is just this generation's OU, the player base was finally able to see it. Here though, it's a hot topic among the player base, as the fact that Mudsdale can wall it is enough for many players to think it's a balanced and healthy metagame presence. Despite this, many believed it was ludicrous to have something as strong as it, with a clear niche in the higher tiers, be allowed in RU. That's why Jimothy Cool saved the day by being the first person to document the existence of Iron Mugulis on YouTube. By becoming a subscriber to the Jimothy Cool channel, you'd be protected from ever having to fight it in any Scarlet and Violet metagame. This didn't do enough though, as Jimothy Cool's YouTube channel was still too small to save the player base from Iron Mugulis. That's why, on March 11th, he decided to team up with OU Titan Great Tusk to defeat Iron Mugulis. Great Tusk can not only switch in against Half Full, but it can also use the super effective Headlong Rush along with Close Combat or Body Press to O-code Iron Mugulis. And yes, I did calc it. One thing to note though is that Iron Mugulis outspeeds Great Tusk, so it would need a Choice Scarf for this plan to work. That wasn't the biggest roadblock though, as Great Tusk would only agree to this deal if Jimothy Cool gained 21,000 subscribers on YouTube. While he waited for that to happen though, a new threat suddenly appeared. Out of nowhere, the PU-ranked Spidops hacked into Jimothy Cool's March 14th upload to spread a message to all of his viewers. Spidops, being a crazed fan of Jimothy Cool, threatened to shoot its sticky web over all non-subscribers of the Jimothy Cool channel. This threat, however, was not taken seriously, and Spidops would be quickly forgotten. That was until March 16th, where Iron Mugulis coerced Spidops into teaming up with it. I imagine that Iron Mugulis decided to use Spidops' goodwill both to gain more power and to get a shot at destroying PU. However it started though, Great Tusk still promised to solve the issue. Sure, Great Tusk couldn't hit Spidops with its stabs, but what the hell could Spidops do against it? The calculator only further proves my point, as while Great Tusk's knockoff would be a 3-hit KO against it, the average attack from Spidops is a 7-hit KO at best. Again though, none of this would actually work if Jimothy Cool didn't gain the subscribers necessary for Great Tusk to defeat them. Thankfully then, on March 20th, Jimothy Cool finally gained 21,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. All that would need to be done now is to have Great Tusk perform the act that it promised to do. As it turned out, Iron Mugulis was either not running max speed or just got cocky and ran a modest nature. This made all of us, the Jimothy Cool fanbase, very excited when Headlong Rush was used against it. That happiness quickly vanished though, as Iron Mugulis survived on 1 HP with its Focus Sash. Not long after, it would use Endeavor to even out the matchup. There was still hope though. Great Tusk still outspeeds Iron Mugulis. Now, it just needed one more hit left. One more hit to defeat the demon of competitive Pokemon. As it turned out though, Iron Mugulis was stronger than we thought, as it got the last laugh. Executing Quick Attack, we lost Great Tusk. To this day, we Jimothy Cool fans continue to mourn its loss. The Great Tusk will forever be missed. Thank you for your services. It goes without saying, but I don't think I've cried harder in my life. The death of my dog and the ending of Anohana, both being equally traumatic, cannot compare to Great Tusk's death. In honor of Great Tusk's death, I encourage you to subscribe to the Timothy Cool channel alongside my own channel. I make content very similar to his, covering the more historical aspects of competitive Pokemon, along with a series where I try to find the lowest possible tier in every generation of Pokemon. I'll forgive you if you don't follow through with that, though, as the death of Great Tusk had us all wondering what would happen next. Who would be the one to destroy Iron Mugulis and end its reign of terror? We didn't need to ask for long, though, as the law would catch up to Iron Mugulis on March 21st, following the murder of Great Tusk. Now behind bars, Iron Mugulis needed a way of freeing itself, alongside Garganicle and Goldengo for murdering 14 pregnant women and tax evasion respectively. Through the power of connections, though, Iron Mugulis tried to find a way out. Believing that Iron Mugulis shared its fandom of Jimothy Cool with it, Spidops was still on the loose, fighting in its honor while trying to find a way to break it out of Poke Prison. It's theorized that it was Spidops' intellect on March 22nd that allowed Iron Mugulis to come up with its deadliest plan yet. Taking advantage of the extra damage that the move Saltcure did against Steel, Iron Mugulis would use this talent that Garganicle possessed to attempt a prison escape. With how foolproof the plan was too, it should have been no surprise that, on March 23rd, Poke Fugitive Iron Mugulis managed to escape Poke Prison with Garganicle and Goldengo. It wasn't like the plan was foolproof though. While Iron Mugulis and Goldengo both carried respectable speed stats, Garganicle found itself lagging behind. Even though it was EV trained in speed and handed a choice scarf along with a Jolly Mint by Goldengo while in Poke Prison, it still lagged behind. Officer Jenny thought this would be enough to catch up to the trio, but she never saw it coming. You see, that Spidops has a sticky web. She was done in by the time Garganicle revealed rock polish in the last slot. This song parody does not work. As it turned out though, you can't reveal multiple moves while holding a choice scarf, so Garganicle stayed in prison. I'd say this is a rather rookie mistake by Iron Mugulis, but that's coming from the same guy who said Tyranitar had a good typing. If you've been watching for long enough though, you know that Iron Mugulis lacks basic human empathy. So while Garganicle's sentence was lengthened, Iron Mugulis and Goldengo remained on the run. Thankfully then, by subscribing to the Jimothy Cool channel, Mabostiff would be alerted to use its heightened sense of smell to track down Iron Mugulis' whereabouts. With fan outcry to solve the case coming into fruition, Mabostiff would end up using Odor Sleuth to find Iron Mugulis on March 27th. Sadly though, Iron Mugulis had yet another foolproof plan to prevent taking responsibility for the murder of Great Tusk. This was by sticking itself inside of a Rotom wash. Unfortunately, not even Mabostiff's Metapod could fit inside. It was simply too big, meaning that an alternate way of beating Iron Mugulis would need to be found. Thankfully then, the distant relative of Iron Mugulis, Sinistea, could fit itself inside of Rotom Wash to defeat the future Paradox form of itself. Also, apparently Rotom Wash is a dishwasher now? I guess I'll just roll with that. It's not like I should question Jimothy Cool, especially since it's coming from me, the guy who unironically likes Domestic Girlfriend. Tragically though, as Sinistea found itself closer to defeating Iron Mugulis on March 28th, Spidops came in at the last second to use Sticky Web on it, preventing itself from using the move any longer. Thankfully then, Quackleval would come in to the rescue, claiming that it would use Rapid Spin to remove the sticky web once Jimothy Cool gained 24,000 subscribers on YouTube. Of course, getting to a goal like that wouldn't happen overnight, so Sinistea would have to wait a few days to become free. That wouldn't mean no new developments would come though, as the next day, March 29th, saw a massive change in the trajectory of the storyline. Of course, it was when Jimothy Cool directly called out Spidops for its morally dubious actions. This event saw a change in Spidops' motivations. Instead of being an advocate for people to subscribe to the Jimothy Cool channel, it would now perform its actions to help Iron Mugulis further its goal of ruining the competitive scene of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. At this point, even though the entire player base was in agreement to ban Iron Mugulis from RU, UU, OU, and even Ubers, it was simply too powerful to be stopped. That's why Jimothy Cool needed Iron Mugulis to use its immunity to the Endeavor Quick Attack combination to ensure its victory against it. There was a hole in this plan though, as while the news that Spidops was actually a known war criminal this whole time shocked us all, the more pressing matter was that Sinistea was immune to Quackleval's Rapid Spin, putting the plan in jeopardy. As it would be found out though, Quackleval knew about this the whole time, and planned accordingly, attacking the Sticky Web itself instead of the Sinistea. I don't know how this works, but again, I'm the guy who unironically likes Orimo, so I'm not allowed to have an opinion. Again though, we'd have to wait, as Jimothy Cool had not yet reached 24,000 subscribers by this point. Having not yet reached 24,000 subscribers by April 3rd, Jimothy Cool devised a second plan, and the possibility that Sinistea wouldn't be able to defeat Iron Mugulis even if it was freed from Spidops' Sticky Web. As such, he thought of the idea of using his YouTube audience to locate Palmot and convince it to use Revival Blessing on Great Tusk to bring it back to life. It wasn't until the next day though, on April 4th, that Palmot could be found with the help of Jimothy Cool's subscribers. Despite this, Palmot is a very busy Pokemon, always having to eat a Leppa Berry after each and every job. Hell, that explanation ignored how many jobs it got to begin with. As such, it was hard to find time for a meeting with Palmot, but in the hopes that his YouTube fame could get him closer to that goal, Jimothy Cool once again encouraged his viewers to subscribe to the channel. In the meantime though, Jimothy Cool finally reached his 24,000 subscriber goal by April 5th. So yes, Quackleval used Rapid Spin to free Sinistea, although by that point, Iron Mugulis had gotten bored of how dragged out the Sinistea Arc had gotten, and decided to find a more creative way of staying on the run. As such, contacting Palmot would become a top priority. This would be interrupted on April 6th, however, as Iron Fellow would be introduced to the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet competitive scene. Being the future paradox form of Spoink, it languished in UUBL despite becoming the new face of OU, akin to what Espathra was until we lost it. With an excellent defensive typing, stats copy-pasted from Dialga Origin, and an ability only useful in Ubers, it had everything it would need to become a top-tier threat in SVOU. Despite this, Jimothy Cool would once again save the day by shielding subscribers of the channel from ever having to fight against it. Just like with Iron Mugulis though, this wouldn't be enough. More would need to be done in order to defeat Iron Fellow. What made this even worse was that we'd be stuck without any updates of the story until April 12th. Thankfully then, that update did happen, although it wasn't the news we wanted. Instead of successfully starting a meeting with Palmot, Iron Fellow instead captured it, ensuring that Palmot would no longer be within our grasp. Many wondered why Iron Fellow did this, but it was actually because it was angry that it wasn't able to join RU with Iron Mugulis, as, by that point, the player base had wisened up to the idea of not letting a Pokemon with legendary tier stats roam such a tier. As such, this act by Iron Fellow was seen as an act of revenge. Thankfully then, not all hope was lost, as Iron Treads would be able to scan the area, but only if you subscribed to the Jimothy Cool YouTube channel. All hope quickly died then, once Iron Fellow terrestrialized into the Ghost type on April 14th to avoid detection from Iron Treads. We had a solution though, as Flamigo would use its scrappy ability to detect Iron Fellow when Iron Treads couldn't. Flamigo would only do this reluctantly though, as it found the constant need to tell a story to distract from the overall tone of a Jimothy Cool video. Granted, with a complaint like that, it seemed rather obvious that Flamigo was a fan of the Jimothy Cool channel, meaning that it would detect Iron Fellow so long as Jimothy Cool gained more subscribers on his YouTube channel. Despite this, Flamigo was more against this than we thought, as it didn't detect Iron Fellow until April 18th, where it turned out to be hiding in a Garfield Eats. Flamigo wouldn't just settle for finding Iron Fellow though, as it would need to use close combat to defeat Iron Fellow. If Iron Fellow was still Ghost type though, it wouldn't have O-Code, but thankfully, its Terra ran out because Iron Treads forfeited in its game against it. As such, you'd think Ironfellow could be defeated, but tragically, Flamigo would only use the attack if Jimothy Cool gained more subscribers on YouTube. Taking its time turned out to be the wrong play though when, on April 21st, Ironfellow began trying to convince Flamigo that there was no point in using close combat against it. Jimothy Cool thought that the power of the subscribe button would help it, but we'd have to wait longer to find out. In the meantime, Great Mug's past Paradox form of Sinistea would be introduced as a part of a Terra raid event on April 24th, with Calyrex Ice Rider stats and an ability that's only useful on teams that like Torkoal, but is still mostly only good in Ubers. Great Mugs became a very central threat. This time, the player base knew to use it in OU2, as the death of Great Tusk removed it from its biggest counter, although Golden Go still managed to take advantage of its poor typing, this being the reason that no one wanted to ban it at the time. Despite this, Great Mugs didn't harbor the same ill will toward the player base that Iron Mugulus did, and would have been content with being banned if the player base thought it was the right choice to make. As such, Great Mugs decided to fight against it, only letting subscribers of the Jimothy Cool channel use it in battle. I guess then, the question of if Great Mugs would ever be useful in this endeavor would have to be asked next. It turned out to become irrelevant though, at least for the time being, as on May 3rd, the agonizing wait for the story was finally quenched. As it turned out, Flamigo was brought to the dark side. Thankfully though, it, along with Ironfellow and Iron Mugulus, were thrown in Poke Prison. Sure, I would have liked to know how this happened, especially considering that I thought it would take far longer for the story to develop to this point, but at the very least, it's nice seeing more of the chaos ensue. Speaking of chaos, more of it would come by May 5th, when Game Freak added the Paradox form of Golden Go Old Money to SVOU via a Terra raid event. With stats the same as Slacking, one of the best typings in the game, and an ability that only works if you think Torkoal is best girl, you have a very strong Pokemon. In fact, you have the strongest Pokemon. Old Money was able to do what Iron Mugulus couldn't and make its way to untiered. We just never happened to know about it. We assumed that it came out on that day, the day of its attack, but it had really existed in the game's code this whole time, dying to go unnoticed. How did Golden Go end up in Poke Prison earlier? Well, it was because Old Money was having it do its bidding. Otherwise, Golden Go's trust fund would run out. We thought that we had finally ended the storyline when Iron Mugulus and Ironfellow were thrown in Poke Prison, but as it turned out, Old Money was the true antagonist all along. Or was he? As you can see, on May 10th, Great Mugs and Iron Mugulus were spotted having a meal at the Minions restaurant at Universal Studios Japan. The motivations behind this meeting are still currently unknown to this day. I theorize that after Iron Mugulus' prison escape, Great Mugs wanted to have a peaceful lecture to help it stop being so hateful toward the world. But hey, that's just a theory! A probably wrong theory! Oh, my mic peaked. As it turned out though, Iron Mugulus would be back in prison by May 15th, suggesting that Great Mugs personally requested Officer Jenny if he could have a meeting with Iron Mugulus. We may not have seen the guards at the Minions restaurant, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were there, just lurking in the shadows. This reaffirms Great Mugs' positions and motivations to rehabilitate Iron Mugulus, while also expanding on why Iron Mugulus has been having such a confusing history in prison over the past few days. That wasn't the only thing to happen that day either, as Jimothy Cool reaffirmed to us that Flamigo has seen the error of its ways, and that by subscribing to the channel, its sentence would be shortened. This would prove to happen when, on May 17th, Flamigo was bailed out of prison. I theorized that this could have been done by Spidops, who by this point has become so irrelevant to the storyline that it's likely just gone back to being a Jimothy Cool fan. Regardless, what really matters is that by subscribing to the Jimothy Cool channel, Flamigo will be able to get a ride back to RUBL by Revavroom. Flamigo must be thankful too, as with Ironfellow in Poke Prison, its time in the saga had finally come to a close. Or so we thought. But I was bamboozled, as on May 22nd, it turned out that Flamigo took Iron Mugulus with it, declaring its official betrayal to the Jimothy Cool fanbase. Now, it's unclear how this happened. We didn't know whether Flamigo took its rescue into its own hands, or if the bond was paid by Old Money to free them both. For now, we didn't know. What we did know was that Flamigo and Iron Mugulis used this prison escape to sneak into Game Freak headquarters and delay the release of Pokemon Home, because God knows that's genuinely the only even remotely understandable reason for why it was delayed, even though they already gave a release date! That's a discussion for a different day, though. If you're interested in the subject, then both Rose Panther and Jimothy Cool himself have good videos on the subject. For now, we just knew that this delay was achieved to prevent Landorus Therian from defeating it. Poke police officers Mabostiff and Lillipup wouldn't take this though, as they start an investigation on May 23rd to help track down Iron Mugulis. This investigation would only work though if you subscribed to the Jimothy Cool YouTube channel, therefore putting it on hold for the time being. On May 24th, while the investigation continued to be on hold, it was realized that Iron Fellow had escaped Poke Prison as well, and might have had a bigger hand in delaying the release of Pokemon Home than we initially thought. Whether it was bailed out by Iron Mugulis, or if it found time to sneak out on its own, I really don't expect to get an answer. All I know is that Jimothy Cool will need your help more than ever, as subscribing to his YouTube channel will be the only way of locating it. Apparently, no one subscribed to him on May 25th though, as Steamed Hams instead chose to terrorize the competitive scene. Being the past Paradox form of Spoink, it showed stats of Mewtwo, a repeated unfunny joke about Torkoal and Ubers, and Pyroar's typing. As such, it showed promise. However, unlike Great Mugs, who were content with staying OU, Steamed Hams showed more affiliation with Iron Fellow than we thought. As such, it found itself in RU, only for Iron Mugulis haters to kick it out as soon as it entered, leaving it in RUBL. Steamed Hams must have been one hell of a good decoy though, as on May 27th, the Poke Police finally caught up with Iron Mugulis, Iron Fellow, and Flamigo, putting them back in Poke Prison, and releasing Pokemon Home as planned. Granted, by the time May 29th rolled around, Jimothy Cool would finally theorize that Old Money was the puppet master all along, finally getting us closer to the final boss. And that, my friends, is the end of the prologue. I want to give an endless thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I had cold feet going into this one, given how frankly stupid the material of the video was, but if you made it this far, then it means that you were as interested in comprehending this absolute fever dream of a storyline as I was. Beyond all, though, I want to thank my wonderful patrons, including my NFE patrons Mystic Owl, Filthy Cubone, and Jesse, my OU patrons Regimania, J3 Puffin, Eternum, Torkin Peter, and Yoshi64, along with my wonderful Anything Goes patron Plasma Energized. Your support means the world to me, and is what keeps this channel growing. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. With that said, I'll see you all next time.